Temple and Kent State.
Yeah, I would say Trent Dilfer has driven UAB football back to the Watson Brown, Neil Callaway days, but I don't know that it was this bad then, Lance.
Oh, I don't think it was.
I mean, that's what's crazy about this. I don't know. I mean, there were some dark days of Neil Callaway and Garrick McGee and late Watson Brown, but I don't know that it got this bad.
Before today, the last time UAB football lost 4 straight games it was last year under Trent Dilfer. But before that was 2013 under Garrick McGee.
Yeah.
And I have not seen Dilfer's comments. I hope they're a lot more humbled than they were last week.
You have to be when you give up 71 at home.
71, my gosh.
Here we go, Trent Dilfer after the 71-20 home loss in front of a few fans down at Protective Stadium. Here's Trent.
But I do know I've been through a lot of storms. I've been booed out of stadiums and outbacks and other places that what they can't do is blame each other. If they need something to blame, they can blame me. You know, I apologized to the team for not getting them ready for that type of physical nature of football. And I'll say to the fans, like, you deserve more. City of Birmingham deserves more. If you're going to be angry, please be angry at me. Don't be angry at our kids. Our kids are giving us everything they have. And that's my job to make sure something like this never happens again.
Well, I got bad news for him. They're 127 out of 134 against the rush, and guess who they play next?
At Army.
Yep.
And they're getting
the road.
24 points. That is just a massive number. I'll give Trent a little credit. A lot more humbled in that situation.
Yeah. By the way, Lance, they're getting 21 points from a team that's
24, I think.
24, whatever it is, from a team that's going to limit possessions. That's like I don't know how to do this, Lance, but I would say Army giving you 24 would be the equivalent of like somebody else giving you 36.
Yeah, like when Josh Heupel giving you 40.
Yeah, something like that.
Dick Bennett was coaching Wisconsin, when they were 10-point underdogs, they were a 20-point underdog.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, so this is night and day. And look, I don't think it gets any better for UAB. When you start to look at the schedule, they've got a lot of losses coming up. I mean, do you guys just assume that this is going to be one of those mutual decisions where, like, okay, wasn't a good fit?
I don't know, because it's dumb to walk away from the check. You got to make them fire you. But a mutual decision might be, we'll give you this to leave.
If I'm miserable and want to leave, I could reach out to my bosses and say, listen, you owe me this much money. If you fire me, you're not happy with me. We can sit here and ride this out, or we can find a middle ground here. That could happen if it gets to that point. By the way, Army, they were perfect throwing the football this past week. 5 of 5 in their win over Tulsa. So 5 passes, 5 completions, all over 28 yards. So they'll suck you in just to throw it right over your head.
Oh, hey, Navy and Army are both slinging it around the yard right now. Both really good teams, too. Can't wait for that game. You think about Navy against UAB, threw it 11 times. Which that's kind of unheard of. I don't know. I would be surprised if they go 1-11, and I'm not just saying that. When you look at the schedule, that is a distinct possibility.
Yeah, Rice is the lone remaining game. You're like, I think they could probably win that game.
Yeah. And they could beat UConn, they could beat Tulsa at home, but I think 3-9 is kind of the ceiling right now. But the floor is definitely 1-11.
All right. One more thing to get to before we take a break and get to Tyler Booker. Tell us about our friends at Gutter Cap. The leaves are falling. Let C-Stu clean those gutters out one more time.
205-823-2212. Cap it, don't snap it. It's a dirty, dangerous job. Got to see C-Stu over the weekend. Call him. He will come out and give you an absolutely free estimate. 45% off the retail price right now. 205-823-2212. Gutter Cap patented aluminum cover system fits over most existing gutters. It will allow only water inside of the gutter. All the other debris will be shut out. You'll never have to clean those dirty, dangerous gutters again. Cap it, don't snap it. 205-823-2212 or guttercapbirmingham.com.
Scott's got multiple angles, I believe, of the goalpost walking down Broadway in Nashville and being thrown into the Cumberland River. All you have to know is the initial fine for Vanderbilt rushing a field and tearing down goalpost is $100,000, and it goes up from there. Arkansas got $250,000 because they beat Texas a few years ago.
It's cumulative, yeah.
Vandy, only $100,000. Their first time to celebrate, first time beating Alabama since 1984, first time since the 60s beating them at home. They finally wiggled that thing out of that small stadium, and then they're marching it down Broadway. 3 miles, if you go and, I don't want to sound like Joe Tess here, but if you go and Google Maps it, it's 3 miles. 3 miles! 3 miles.
Week
6 in the books in college football, and what a weekend it was. 5 top 25s lose to unranked teams. There is one bowl-eligible team in college football. There's only one, and who would have thought this team would be the only bowl-eligible team rolling into October? We bring on the man from Fox, Brock Huard, right here on Unlocked. Brock, that's my trivia question right off the bat. There's only one bowl-eligible team. Do you know who it is?
That would be the big boss, Eric Shanks' alma mater. That would be the University of Indiana, or Indiana University.
I think it's IU, but...
Yeah, it's IU. Indiana University, those beautiful Hoosiers. Cignetti, crazy Cignetti, got those guys playing Wired and Alive and 6-0 on a bye. And I think you talked about them a few weeks ago, Lance. That schedule in the second half of the year is not as daunting as some in the Big Ten. So pretty cool. And I'm guessing Bloomington, the old Big Red liquor store, has done pretty well this fall.
Do you ever see the movie Breaking Away with Dennis Quaid back in, I think it was 79?
Ooh, that's a good. I've certainly heard of it.
Well, it's a cycling movie.
I mostly watch game film, Lance.
Okay, I get that.
What I watch.
You know, if you ever want to get away from it, decompress a little bit, really good movie. Randy Quaid's in it. Dennis Quaid. No, Randy Quaid's not in it. Dennis Quaid. I forgot who else in it. Anyway, it takes place in Bloomington. So there is a scene where they're hanging out and they're watching football practice. So I don't know much about Bloomington.
Have you been to Bloomington?
I have not. I'm willing to go, though. Yeah. I've heard it's a fun town.
Oh, they get after it. Yeah, that is consistently ranked up there as one of the biggest party schools in America. Kind of, I think most would assume ASU or U of A or some of your beautiful folks down south would like to get after it. But yeah, they got these liquor stores like on every corner, and I think they're called Big Red Liquor or something. And they get after it, and they continue to play good ball. So kudos to the Hoosiers, the first bowl-eligible team in 2024.
You bring this up, and you were like, when you look at the schedule, it doesn't look daunting. Here's the problem now. I can't look at a schedule and say that's a guaranteed win. And this going back, and we'll get into Alabama, Vanderbilt in a second, but when I look at Indiana, there's a good chance they're going to be favored against Nebraska, but it's going to be close to a pick. There's a good chance against your improved Huskies, they're going to be favored, but it's going to be close to a pick. They go to Michigan State. Mm-hmm. That could be a potential landmine. They've got Michigan at home, still a good enough defense and ability to run the ball where they could beat Indiana. Then they go to Ohio State. Mm-hmm. The only for sure winnable game is Purdue. Now, if you would have told Cignetti and Indiana fans before the season 7-5, they would have taken that all day long. But now Indiana wants to do the unthinkable and get to a college football playoff.
Yeah, I was just looking at some numbers last night, and actually our young graphics guy and our crew kind of tried to sell this a week ago in our game of just I don't want to call it parity in college football, because when I see Oregon or Ohio State or Georgia, and I look at their rosters, Lance, to a man, and the depth on those rosters compared to Indiana or even, some of these top 25 teams, it's not the NFL, right? Where the Giants can go into Seattle and beat my Seahawks yesterday afternoon. It's not that kind of parity, but I do think the transfer portal, I do think the extra years, I do think NIL, I do think guys that maybe kicked down from as a 4-star or 5-star somewhere else and it didn't work, and kicked down somewhere else and got a little edge to him, or like Indiana, who's got a QB from Ohio that's got this chip on his shoulder that can prove and wants to prove that he's a really good player and is a really good player, and kicks himself up, just kind of, look at the records, look at as you said, these games every week where maybe 10, 15 years ago, a little easier to pick them, a whole lot harder now because these rosters are better across the board with many, many teams than they were, just a generation ago.
Yeah, I use that overused word in the NFL, and I said it's accurate, but it's overused. But when you've got an Alabama team that was up 28-0 just last week on Georgia, up 30-7 at half, you would worry about what we called not a trap game in this situation, coming out flat. Alabama might come out flat after that big win. Whether or not they're going to cover the 22.5. There wasn't a world back in the day that you lived in that Alabama could lose a game like this. I mean, there's a reason Vanderbilt was 0-60 all-time versus top 5 teams. And then you go out in the transfer portal, Diego Pavia comes in, and it's like he is the heart and soul of this team. And I said it's almost like watching a really good quarterback, a confident quarterback in slow motion. That was kind of like watching this guy, but everybody buys into him around this team, and it's been like a lot of fun to watch. But I still am shocked. At halftime, Alabama's down They were minus 13 at half. I had to jump on it, Brock, because that had Alabama winning, I think, by 6 at the end of the game. I was like, again, in what world can we live that Alabama, with all of this offensive talent, can't beat Vanderbilt by more than a touchdown? And obviously that did happen. Vanderbilt played them toe-to-toe. I don't know how much of that film you saw, but Vanderbilt never trailed. They were 12 of 18 on third downs. Kane Womack's defense could not get off the field.
No, and in those worlds, Lance, as you mentioned that a couple different times, in what world do we live in? I mean, in those old days, that world of Vanderbilt, just did not have some of the dudes they got now, right? In the old days, Indiana didn't have some of the depth and some of the dudes they do now. In the old day, and go through it, as I was looking, I'm gonna have to put my Ebenezer's on here, maybe for the first time on our show's history, but as you get older, you don't really care.
Hey,
so
do you actually go when you go get readers? Can you just grab them from like a CVS, or do you actually go in and make sure they're matching whatever prescription you need?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lance. So for years, I just went to Costco and got 3 for like $19, and then my wife's like, you know what? We need to go to the eye doctor. So for the first time in 20-something years, went to the eye doctor, pretty painless, and actually have prescription glasses now. So 2 pairs. I kind of like the readers because I could break them and scratch them, and it wasn't a big deal. $400 glasses, a little bigger deal. Got to take care of them. In what world is BYU 5-0? In what world is Iowa State 5-0? In what world is Indiana 6-0? In what world is Pittsburgh 5-0? In what world are Army and Navy 5-0? In what world is Texas Tech 5-1? In what world is Colorado 4-1? I mean, this is the world we're living in. This is the world of college football today. So get used to it. I don't think it's changing much. You mentioned Vanderbilt and their little QB, 8 touchdowns, no picks. You know what that guy's got? An enormous chip on his shoulder. You know what he has? Background of playing this game. I mentioned earlier the kid up at Indiana, Rourke. You know what he has? 5 years of playing at Ohio at a really high level. And he can come into the situation and not be overwhelmed. What does Will Rodgers have at Washington? How can he beat Michigan? How can he throw 12 touchdowns and 1 pick and be 5th in the country in completion percentage? Oh, I don't know. I played for 4 years at Mississippi State. I got time on task. I got experience. I've had some level of success and go through these teams. So this is a new world, man. This is not the old world where, she's just kind of stuck in that purgatory world of, we're Vanderbilt. Academic standards, difficult, can't get anybody, got to take 1 and 2 stars, try to develop them, maybe hit on a few. Not anymore, man. Now you're able, with this transfer portal, with NIL, and oh, by the way, if BYU keeps winning and Colorado keeps winning and these schools keep winning, you know what their boosters are going to do? And donations are going to go up. And it's going to give you more opportunity to go in that NIL world and compete in ways that you couldn't 5, 10, 15 plus years ago.
Yeah, look, it hadn't affected my consumption. I mean, I'm loving it. I sat back all day Saturday, started at 11 o'clock, had friends in town. We went all night till, deep in the morning because college football is still that entertaining. There are certain aspects, though, with the transfer portal and with NIL, with the entitlement now of these players. And look, everybody swears by Malachi Moore, one of the captains on Alabama's defense, number 13. I don't know if you saw the nonsense going on at the end of that game.
He lost his ever in mind.
Yeah, I mean, the immaturity of kicking a football, the pouting of throwing a mouthpiece, the shooing away Kane Womack and a sub coming in that game. I was blown away by that. Now, Kane Womack came out. He addressed it at their press conference less than an hour ago. Kalen DeBoer was asked about it and asked if he specifically would be suspended, and he said no. I don't know about the old Don James that you know well, Nick Saban. I know it's a different world, and I don't want to sound like the old man on the lawn screaming, but there's got to be some accountability. And everybody speaks to, well, Malachi Moore loves the University of Alabama. Here's what I would ask you, though, Brock. I'm sure some dumb redneck loves Alabama more than he loves his wife or his job. And if he does something illegal after an Alabama loss, there are repercussions. There is a punishment to that action. And I just don't know when, again, I don't know how, if you're Malachi Moore, would that look how something can't be handled, and maybe it's handled internally, but I was just blown away with the optics of all of that.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it right there at the very end of that, Lance, and that is got to be handled internally. And, I think back, and I think I've shared this with you last year at the national championship game. It was so cool, right? Even though the game didn't go the way of the Huskies, but it was so cool to see 300 former players, and from the 70s to the 80s to my era in the 90s. And then the guys from this century that made us all feel a little bit old.
Was Lincoln Kennedy there?
Big Lincoln was there. Yeah, Big Link was there. I mean, I think the whole 91 team got honored, so most of those guys were there. And but I remember the next day or the day after the national title game getting emotional on my show, and I apologize if I already shared this with you and shared it on this air. As I'm telling it, I may have already done so, but I remember getting emotional, and I said, and Salk's like, are you crying? I'm like, I wouldn't say I'm crying, but I'm very much in my emotions, in my feelings, as the kids say, and getting really wispy. And I said, it's because not they lost or anything. It was just because I got to see so many old brothers, so many guys that we just went through stuff with for 4+ years, went through mat drills, went through it that day. We didn't have an indoor facility, right? Monsoons, went and practiced on our grass field that was full of goose poop, and we all had rashes on our calves and like, what an itchy and scratchy, what the hell is going on? But you did it, and you went through it together. And because of it, you had bonds and brotherhood. And that's one of the trade-offs. If parity is a great thing, if a leveling of the playing field is a great thing, if teams rising is a great thing, well, one of the consequences or one of the trade-offs, you want to call it player empowerment, is just the lack of connective tissue, right? The lack of a bond in a locker room that you try to create. And it's constantly a question to the Dan Lannings of the world when you bring these transfers in, or Jed Fishes of the world that I have, of how you doing it, man? How you coalescing? How you bringing this group together when you don't have time on task? And, I think you see something like, you tell me, man, 10, 15 years ago, you got some jackal on the Alabama team doing that. Saban doesn't have to react. There's going to be a teammate that's going to grab him by the shoulder pads and throw him into the bench and throw him in and behind the scenes in the locker room, just say, you're embarrassing us. You put on a show. It's the most selfish thing. You're making it about you instead of us. And there were those kind of alphas and that kind of relationship in years past that, really hard to imagine you can find that in today's day and age of all the nomadic moves and all the transfers and just that lack of, as I said, connective tissue.
The game of the week, obviously, Eugene, Ohio State taking on Oregon. You were on the call Friday night. I sent you a text. I cannot believe my man Jonathan Smith rolled out the kicker there late. Oregon shouldn't have been in that situation. Oregon was much better. The red zone turnovers from Dylan Gabriel. If I'm an Oregon fan, I'm concerned just for the simple fact that I haven't seen Oregon really play a complete game. And Ohio State seems like one of these teams, when they are challenged, especially in the regular season, they always are up for that challenge, sans Michigan the last 3 years. But you saw Ohio State completely dominant against Iowa, especially in that second half. Now they go to Eugene to take on the Ducks. And I don't know. I mean, Oregon's undefeated. That's good. They're number 3. That's good. They've got a veteran quarterback. But they just look a little off. Am I wrong there?
Mm-hmm. No, I got a text from an Oregon alum and guy that I really trust who knows his football and love hearing from him, and that will actually bounce things off of him going into Oregon games because he's that passionate about it. And that's what he said, that word trust. I don't know if I trust Dylan Gabriel, and those were his words, not necessarily mine. But I think that's a fair question. I would also say, do Ohio State fans have implicit trust in Will Howard? Like, do you know when he goes on the road and he's going to have some tough circumstances? And remember, K-State kind of had an opportunity. Do you want Avery Johnson? You want Will? How's all of that work? And they were willing to move on. I know the spring was competitive, even into fall. And Will has done some really nice things and taken care of the football. But man, that place is loud. And I wish the next round, if I could pay your way, if I had that kind of dough and charter a flight for you guys and parachute you into Autzen Stadium.
Everything sounds great about this outside of the parachuting in.
Okay, well, if I could just limo you in. A lot of traffic in and out of Autzen. There's not a lot of ways in and out, but if I could get you in there and get you in a suite next to Phil Knight and his posse, and just have you guys there, I promise you would leave and go, man, that is a scene. Like, they have made it an event. Madison, you jump around in the third quarter, and a lot of places you have like one event a game, right? At Utah, it's the moment of loud, and these environments have done an awesome job. At Michigan, they play their mute, but like from beginning to end, Lance, and for 45 minutes leading into the game, it's like the best music you've ever heard from 70s and 80s and 90s. Like, you're getting ready to go. And at the end of the first quarter, they do this tribute to the history and the heroes of Oregon, and they play and it just sucks you in. and shout at the end of the third quarter and everything in between. It's just like that environment has become just a rock concert, and you got to be a part of it. You don't want to miss it. And it's loud. I would say Arrowhead Stadium, the Horseshoe, Autzen, Husky Stadium. I mean, 3 or 4 of the loudest that I've been in where, and it's really hard to communicate.
Got to
really
get you to SEC country. Hey, nothing like going on the road and having to take on a Vanderbilt team. But have you been to games in SEC stadiums?
I have. I've been to all of them.
Okay.
The Swamp is really loud. I have not. I mean, I had LSU versus like a Louisiana. I didn't have them, in prime real estate. Bama, to me, sound-wise, was not overwhelming, right? A lot of those stadiums are huge, but that sound escapes. Autzen Stadium, Husky Stadium, Lumen Field, these places have built the stadium so that cantilever, and the sound goes up and that sound comes down. The Horseshoe does some of that. It doesn't escape much because it's everywhere, but it is from a decibel standpoint. I know LSU is way, way up there. Georgia gets going down in the bowl, but man, it's gonna be a hell of an environment. And that team, those two teams, we said at the end of our game, like if you took 22 starters, Lance, right? Okay, here's 22. Give me a Duck, give me a Buckeye. I think it's like 11-11.
Wow.
I really do. I think it is that closely contested on both sides of the ball to make it one great environment for one Todd Blackledge and Noah Eagle will call Saturday.
I hate to say this out loud, but we will officially be halfway through the season next week. But with that said, you've got Texas back at number 1 after the Alabama loss. And the significance of the games in the top 4 with Texas and the Red River shootout against Oklahoma, Ohio State, Oregon, obviously 2 and 3, Penn State traveling to the Coliseum to take on what has been the last couple of weeks very disappointing for USC, but a USC's team that is still capable of beating Penn State at home. So we're going to get more shift there. If I asked you right now, do you feel good about saying, yeah, that's the best team in college football?
No, I don't think so. I do think Texas is a very mature team and is, from a body of work standpoint, and the win up in Michigan. And we know Michigan is flawed, and obviously the QB situation has been very problematic, and they've been one-dimensional. But they just mollywopped them. I mean, that game wasn't even as close as that score. So I would say that's one of the more convincing pieces of body of work that you have, and it's all fragmented right now. And you're right, more of these puzzle pieces for the committee will come together this weekend, and you'll get a real chance to evaluate. And I like hard, man. I like it when it gets tough and adverse. And for Ohio State to go on the road, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be loud. There's gonna be mistakes. There's gonna be things to overcome and persevere. Right, for Penn State to go all the way across the country, a little easier, I think, to the west than it is going to the east where you lose all the hours. But, the Coliseum, and you're going to play a desperate team that has to have it. That's going to be hard. And USC can run, and they can play at home on that fast track. And so, I think Texas, when I look at all 3 of those games, I would say, I know it's a rivalry game and crazy things happen. They always do in that game. But I would say Texas, to me, feels about as complete and mature. And when you got 2 QBs doing it and competing, which should bring out the very best in Quinn Ewers, because he knows every moment of every play of every series of every game, I got to be on it because this Manning dude played pretty good behind me. Yeah, I'd say that Texas team is pretty darn mature.
It is Unlocked with Brock Huard, brought to you by MyBookie, mybookie.ag. Double that initial deposit when you put in next round. That's simple. Put in the code next round. They will double your initial deposit at mybookie.ag. We talked about Ashton Jeanty last week, and I honestly wasn't watching, but I was watching the scroll, and it was like 9 carries, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. First carry against Utah State takes it to the house, I think 63 yards. He has got over 1,000 yards now through 5 games. He's averaging right at 11 yards per carry. Here's the crazy thing. He didn't play the second half Saturday night against Utah State. He didn't play the second half earlier this season against Portland State. If Spencer Danielson, the first-year head coach, really wanted to get him more and more touches and beef these numbers up, he could. But, he's sitting, and he's still got these monumental numbers. I know Cam Ward, based on the fact that Jalen Milroe threw a pick 6, lost to Vanderbilt, Cam Ward able to come back from 25 down on the road, and I don't care if it was against Cal or not. It's pretty good defense. That was impressive. But right now it looks like a 2-man race between Jeanty and Cam Ward.
Yeah, I'd have to throw Travis Hunter on there.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I think with Jeanty and with Travis, you have 2 guys doing things never done before. or at least on pace to be able to do it. Now, can they sustain it? I think for Jeanty will be a little easier than it will be for Travis in the Big 12, for Jeanty in the conference that he's in against some really mediocre defenses. But I was looking at the numbers, and they unfortunately for him tailed down because, as you said, he was done at 186 yards and a half of work. But I thought Barry Sanders' record would never be touched. Barry Sanders' single season rushing record of over 2,600 yards, and it won't be touched in 11 games. But Jeanty's going to have 13 games. They're going to have a bowl game. Who knows, a Mountain West championship, and maybe a 14th game if they can, play to their level. That thing is within reach. I mean, very much within reach. Averaging 200 yards a game, and then for Travis to do things never done, to play 125 snaps, to play at the level he did. I know we talked about that a couple weeks ago after my CU game, and to see him and the Heisman odds go from 15-1 to 5-1. So yeah, I would say right now those three have probably separated themselves. And Lance, you're a football historian and you've loved this game for a long time, as I have. Doesn't Jeanty feel like Marshall Faulk?
I don't know what he can do with his hands. So I go back, and obviously being a big Rams guy, Marshall Faulk, like 99 or even 98 through 2001, 2002, was the best player in football. And yes, he could literally take games over. And I think Mike Martz cost the Rams a championship by not focusing more on Marshall Faulk. That is a high compliment. I've never thought about him like that. His balance, his vision, incredible.
Yes. Just remember Marshall at San Diego State. Like every time he touched the ball, you're like, oh my gosh, he could take it 70 yards. Every time Jeanty touches the ball, and Oregon felt the same way, by the way. And what he did at Oregon looks like that much more superhuman, because they, have not given it up to anybody like that. Now, this will be a wonderful test. And Ohio State, obviously, two monsters at tailback. But you talk to Tosh Lapointe and Dan Lanning, as I have a couple times after that game, and they're just like, yeah, that dude's different. And just body type, contact balance, explosion, running away from people, vision, bounce. He does catch it pretty well too. I mean, they don't have to do that too much. But there is a lot of Marshall Faulk in this kid, and
I will be looking.
I hope he stays healthy.
Well, I'm interested Saturday night, because your late game, at 11 o'clock Eastern time kick, is Hawaii taking on Boise State. And hopefully that'll give an opportunity for Heisman voters to check this kid out, because it's a standalone game. And they're going against a Hawaii team that, like, if he wanted to go 300-plus yards on the ground, he probably could, right?
That's right. Yeah. Did you say Heisman voters on the East Coast? You think they're going to be up at 11 still? Lance, a lot of guys don't have the stamina you got, and gals. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I will be honest. I made it through all of the action on Saturday. I did not make it to the end of Pittsburgh-Dallas last night, just because of the weather delay pushed it so far back. And so I got up and I saw Tolbert's fourth down touchdown. I was actually pulling for Pittsburgh. Didn't have any skin in the game in that game, but I wasn't able to stay up for that one. But on a Saturday night, knowing that I can sleep in a little bit, I will stay up and check out Ashton Jeanty. Again, I've watched him a bunch, but
I tried, Lance. I was on that East Coast for my UCF Colorado game, and got back and maybe had too much carbs and pizza and stuff. But man, I got back into bed at like 11. There was a late game on. I forget who that was that night. Maybe UCLA. And I was like, I can do this. No, I can't. I was gone. I like before midnight. I don't think I made it through the first quarter. And thinking about them East Coast voters trying to stay up till 11. I hope so. But more than likely, they'll probably just see the highlights and a stat line that, once again, will be extraordinary.
Okay, so watching your Huskies, and I did have them minus the one against Michigan, and we talked about it a little bit. Like against Rutgers, they doubled them up. They were the better team. Rutgers is a good, solid team, had a 7-point loss this past weekend in Lincoln. But this Washington team at 4-2, I think they're a really good team. And you mentioned Will Rodgers in his 4 years in Starkville. Just a solid quarterback. Jonah Coleman is, one of the better backs nobody talks about. Their defense is playing really good. I give Fish a lot of credit. I was talking Mike Elko up earlier on the show today, and for them to lose week one and come back to where they are right now. But I think Fish is doing a really good job with this team. And outside of some special teams miscues, the record could be much different. But with all of the turnover, and you can speak to this a little bit better with Kalen DeBoer leaving and all of the turnover from that roster, for him to have them where they are right now. If I'm a Husky fan, I'm kind of excited about this.
Yeah, I think you are. And that's going to be kind of the theme throughout. And in talking to Jed, it's just laying that foundation. Jonathan Smith trying to do the same at Michigan State and pretty tough schedule. And obviously the QB has just been prone to so many critical mistakes. And that's where Will Rodgers and his experience has come into play, man. The one interception, which was a great pick by that Michigan linebacker, that is it. Has protected the ball phenomenally well. And, I have them this week, Lance. We actually got flipped over to do the morning game. So we'll have Iowa, Washington, which I think is a pick 'em or a 1-point spread.
Yeah, I saw Iowa was like 2.5.
Were they? Okay. Yeah. So, which makes sense at Iowa. If that's at Washington, it's probably flipped the other way. But just kind of starting to do my due diligence. And even though I'm a Husky and I've watched many of these games, when you do the game, you get to peel back more layers. And what struck me here, Lance, is it is such a beautiful blend of transfers. You have these kids from Montana State, Nevada, Sacramento State, but then you also have Indiana, Arizona, Mississippi State, just Power 4, Big Sky. Like you just got this group that, has come together, this group that's not entitled. They've not had to fight any of that. And then some sneaky good players. The receiver is second in the country in receiving touchdowns. He's filled in for Roma Dunze, Denzel Boston, and done an awesome job. And then Jonah Coleman, dude's averaging over 100 yards. And I honestly, Lance, don't know how you tackle that human being. He's like 5'7.5", 215. He dips his pads down. He has nothing to hit but his thighs. And the first guy usually doesn't tackle him. So yeah, a win out at Iowa, a bye week, and then they'll go to Indiana. This is their tough stretch of 3 or 4 on the road. And then unfortunately for them, they got Penn State and SC and Oregon in the final quarter of the season.
All breaks in the schedule. Now, all winnable games.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly.
So after
but no break in that schedule.
Before we get to our first break here and then talk a little NFL, after 6 weeks of football, and I'm happy for Sam Pittman, but I thought going into this bye that Arkansas, there was a good chance they would make a change, and maybe Bobby Petrino would be the interim guy, and the big boosters that really wanted him back in Fayetteville would get behind this and give him whatever resources he wanted, and he would ultimately be the head coach next year. But Arkansas realistically should be 5-1. They should have beaten Oklahoma State in double overtime. They controlled that game. They were dominating at half. But they went a different way. Like, if you were to tell me that Arkansas was going to beat Tennessee, I'd have been like, Taylor Green was going to be out of his mind. Taylor Green didn't have a touchdown in the game Saturday night, and they still beat Tennessee, holding them till 14. I got to ask you about the Nico play on the end there. You can't. You've got to throw the football, right?
Do you have to ask me? Do you really? Titus's team got mollywopped against the best team in Colorado Friday night. So we had some of the kids over Saturday eating pizza and hanging out. And I called Titus up eventually as some of the parents came to pick up the kids. And I said, Titus, watch us play. So they were down the hot tub hanging out and eating pizza themselves. I said, hey, watch us play. What is the one thing as a QB, right? As a freshman in a high school QB, here's the situation. I paused, I rewound it back, 4th down, or whatever it was, the final play. What can you not do? Like, what do you have to do on this play? And he's like, you have to give your guy a chance. You have to give your guy a chance. You've got to just, punt the ball, kick the ball, throw it over your head, do whatever you can. Like, you've got to give your guy a chance. And he knew that, but wow, what a moment of the game speeding up on you. Yeah. You hear that in baseball, right? You hear that with pitcher. Oh man, game is sped up on this guy. Like, if you ever want an image of a young quarterback in the game totally speeding up on you, where your brain, like, it goes puberty, like, just you lose your pubescent mind. That was the play, unfortunately, for Nico right there.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know if you remember this play, and I bring it up a lot, and Ole Miss fans hate me for it. But like I've said before, they're allergic to Atlanta. Like, they find ways to not get there. They've never been before, well documented. But it was 4th and 26, Arkansas against Ole Miss, the final play. And Hunter Henry, very good tight end veteran, the ball, he's got it. He just throws it over his head, and bounces perfectly to Alex Collins, who picks up 26 yards. And they go on and they win that game, and it was insane. But, like, I was just like, Nico, you just got to throw it up. Just at least give anybody a chance in the back of the end zone. Hated it for the kid. I was glad to see Arkansas win the game. Not only did I have them plus 14, I like seeing the upsets, and I like Sam Pittman.
Yeah, Sam, and it was neat. One of Titus's buddies, really good player, going to be an SEC O lineman one day, and his dad was over, and he's like, I just like that Sam Pittman guy. There's a likability, and sometimes O-line coaches have that just genuine nature. Andy Reid, right? Former O-line guy back in the day. There's just a genuine likability, and you find yourself rooting. Maybe it's a big guy too, right? You just kind of find yourself naturally rooting for that big old former lineman that sure seems to be one heck of a genuine dude.
It is Unlocked with our friend Brock Huard from Fox. It is brought to you by mybookie.ag. Make sure you put in that promo code next round. They're going to double the initial deposit. We only have 2 undefeateds in the National Football League. One of those will go off tonight. We will get into that along with a lot of other stuff on the other side right here with Brock Huard on Unlocked.
Follow Scott Forrester on Twitter at scottforestertv.
Man, I love a good meal. I'm Jim Dunaway. A good meal is what you get with my friend Sterling at Champy's Chicken on Highway 119 in Alabaster. We're talking great southern fried chicken, wonderful sides, hand-cut chicken fingers, po' boys, and those Mississippi Delta recipe tamales. You got a perfect menu for everybody. Champy's Chicken is perfect for watching the big game, or taking a meal to the lake house, down to the coast, or stay in the restaurant and dine in a great atmosphere. It's all made fresh to order right there on 119 in Alabaster, Champy's Chicken.
Are you tired of buying your CPAP mask and supplies online only to be disappointed? It's time to visit CPAP Plus, your locally owned and operated CPAP shop that prides itself on personal service. Come see what you're buying at CPAP Plus with 3 convenient locations in Pelham, Highway 280, and now open in Trustful. Drop by for a free CPAP checkup and free filters, no appointment needed. Plus, sign up for their giveaway for a chance to win a free travel CPAP machine. Just Google CPAP Plus or visit any of those 3 locations.
Happy football season. At the Next Round, we strive to make our loyal listeners feel like they're a part of the action all season long. My name is Emily Grace McWhorter, and I do that by bringing you along for any given Saturday in Auburn or Tuscaloosa. From pregame warm-ups, touchdowns that make you feel a part of the play, and everything in between, our goal is to make you feel like you're inside Bryant Denny or Jordan Hare. Follow along on our social media at Next Round Live on Instagram, X, and Facebook. Also, check out thebarnauburn.com and covercrimson.com while you're at it. Here's to fall Saturdays.
From the creators of The Next Round comes 2 new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. 2 team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live is dedicated to giving you daily news conferences and practice video from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and around college football. Follow and compare to the sites you used to visit. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Daily Show. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. See more at nextroundlive.com.
By now, you guys know how I feel about my fashion. However, did you know that I care about your fashion choices? Cargo shorts are out, flip-flops are only appropriate on the boat, and please throw away that stained t-shirt from college. You may be thinking, EG, that's all I own. What do I do? Here's what you do. Go to nextround.store and fill your cart with a wardrobe that is approved by me. Stock up on logo t-shirts, hoodies for football season, and hats for every day of the week. Trust me on this one and head over to nextround.store to get stocked up for this season.
Start your day online with our website, nextroundlive.com, for the latest videos, podcasts, and college football stories. It's also a great way to stream the show or shop in the Next Round store. Stay connected by visiting nextroundlive.com.
Take TNR on the go with a podcast built for your satisfaction. Miss Hour 1, find it in podcast form. Miss Hour 2, stream it now. Miss Hour 3, download it for later. Miss Hour 4, well, just know it's never coming back. Listen to TNR wherever you find podcasts.
Start your day online with our website, nextroundlive.com, for the latest videos, podcasts, and college football stories. It's also a great way to stream the show or shop in the Next Round store. Stay connected by visiting nextroundlive.com.
You can't wait for college football talk every Monday. so we don't make you wait. Ryan Brown here for the next round. You can catch ESPN's Tom Luganville with Jim Dunaway on Monday Morning Live at 7 a.m. I'm with Brandon Marcello on the middle 8 at 8 after the next round. Hear from Alabama coach Kalen DeBoer and Auburn coach Hugh Freeze. After the coaches talk, Fox Sports analyst Brock Huard joins Lance Taylor for Unlocked at 1 o'clock. All college football, all day Monday, anywhere you get the next round.
It is Unlocked with our friend, the best in the biz, Fox's Brock Huard. We transition from college football to the NFL. It is always brought to you by mybookie.ag. Very important. Put in that code next round. They're going to double your initial deposit. Football season in full effect. So is winning season with our friends at mybookie.ag. So 2 undefeated teams right now in the NFL. Minnesota was able to close out the Jets yesterday in London and win that game, and they are undefeated. Also undefeated right now is a team that will play tonight, Kansas City hosting the Saints. It hasn't been pretty for Kansas City, and obviously with Rashee Rice out, that is a massive loss for this offense, but they were lucky to survive the Isaiah Likely toe on the back end of the end zone in week 1. A last-second kick from Butker beats the Bengals. The Falcons got robbed of a non-call pass interference. They were down 10-0 to the Chargers, win that game by a possession. They haven't been dominant. They find ways to win. Now they've got the Saints, who look so good through 2 weeks, but they've come back to earth over the last couple of weeks. Does Kansas City go to 5-0 tonight?
I think so. Yeah, they just kind of back to my Texas point, in our last segment talking college football, of just like this mature, fully bloomed culture, like in just knowing who you are. And I think Sark's done an amazing job. I think he's cut a lot of entitlement out down there in Austin. He's got a bunch of grown-ups, and I don't know if there's a more grown-up team with head coach, coordinator, Spagnuolo, offense, defense, special teams. Like, they know who they are, right? Like, so many teams, especially in college football, spend seemingly the first month of September just trying to learn each other's names. The NFL can work the same way. We're seeing that up in Seattle with Mike McDonald, who kind of like these Saints, started fast and has hit a couple speed bumps. But you ask me what team in the NFL like knows thyself, I would say the Chiefs and the Ravens and the 49ers and, just some of the best teams going. And, Patrick Mahomes certainly helps in that element as well.
The Minnesota Vikings, 5-0. I know we've talked about them the last couple of weeks, but, I faded them yesterday. I thought the Jets would play better, and the Jets get kind of behind the 8 ball on the pick 6, but they come back and, they have an opportunity to win it there. There's something, obviously, Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers, there's a miscommunication there, but Aaron Rodgers, is it just age? You talk about legs, man, when they start to break down a little bit. And Aaron Rodgers, it's not the same Aaron Rodgers.
No. You could see it in the end with Peyton's arm, right? When he had the nerve damage in his neck, and you could just see, the arm just didn't work as well. You never really saw that with Brady. I mean, he was just superhuman. He was never particularly athletic and twitchy or anything. So it wasn't like all of a sudden he fell from this mountaintop. Aaron Rodgers was. We talked about this last week or a couple weeks ago of just how creative he was, how he extended plays, how his feet were always underrated, never really talked about. Yeah, and he feels, he feels lethargic as a guy that was so dynamic, because you're used to seeing that, both snapping off passes and the bounce in his legs and the movement is coming out that injury. And Achilles changes you, man. You could talk to anybody that's had that in their 20s or the 30s or the 40s. It just, that is one that can significantly change your bounce. And he just does not seem to have much bounce. Compound that with the issues and personality with the head coach and the drama. And yeah, it's kind of a messy deal, man. The NFL just writes these things.
It really does. But I would think with New York, with the defense they've got, and they were able to win games with the defense last year, and Breece Hall, a healthy Breece Hall. Like how Breece Hall only has 9 carries and only 23 yards. And then you've got a nice compliment with Braylon Allen, a guy you watched at Wisconsin, a physical load. You seem like you had a really good combination. And then, you start to look on the perimeter. I mean, Garrett Wilson, to me, is one of the more, I don't want to say underutilized now, because at least he got targeted 22 times yesterday, but was playing with bad quarterbacks last year. To me, if Garrett Wilson's in the right system, this guy can be as good as Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean, you just start to do it. That's why a lot of people really like the Jets and that playoff team and all this stuff, and just kind of snap your fingers with all this talent. But it isn't about talent all the time in the NFL, man. It is about getting those guys on the same page and everybody humming and believing. And I don't know, Lance, the more that I watch this and I've seen now a cycle up there in Seattle, right? The cycle with all these stars and all the Ring of Honor guys and future Hall of Famers, and kind of cycle out of that generation and into this new one. There's part of me that thinks, man, this is like the perfect sweet spot. Before you've had to pay guys and they're hungry and they're incentivized. And obviously Gino's on basically a year-by-year performance deal. Like, man, this is great. And, just that cycle is so important. I think Minnesota's in a sweet spot, right? I mean, you got a bunch of guys, and obviously Jefferson's got paid and a few of them got paid, but you got just a bunch of hungry dudes trying to get their contract, trying to get that generational deal. And you have a QB in Sam Darnold that's, trying to resurrect a career, make a career, who's still at 26, 27 is young enough. So, yeah, these Vikings are in a pretty sweet spot, to say the least.
Super Bowl 56 not that long ago, where my Rams win their second ever championship against the Bengals. Now both the Bengals and the Rams 1-4. Who is the more surprising 1-4 for you through 5 weeks of the NFL season?
Yeah, probably the Bengals, right? Because the Rams, you can kind of write the script. No Cooper Kupp and, injuries galore on the offensive line and no Puka Nacua. And, right, you just kind of, unfortunately, when you're paying your QB, what you're paying him and a few other pieces, Cooper Kupp as well, like, hey, man, you're just not going to have the depth. You're just not going to have 50 dudes. The Bengals, to me, and I know you paid Joe Burrow, and they're still waiting to pay Jamar, but yeah, that one to me, I don't think they have been. I don't know. You tell me otherwise. Have they been decimated with injuries like the Rams?
No.
It doesn't strike me they have.
And you look back at the schedule, they lose to a bad New England team by a possession, 16-10.
Yep.
Then they lose on the walk-off I mentioned with Harrison Butker. Then they lose, that Monday night game against the Commanders where they couldn't do anything to stop that defense, but they lose one possession, 38-33. They completely gave the game away multiple times yesterday in overtime against Baltimore. They could easily be 5-0 right now. And my question to you, being, playing at this level, there is something about when a team gets behind the 8 ball. I don't want to say these guys quit, but it becomes different. Like 1-4, how bad is the locker room? Is there still, we've got 17 total games, we can still salvage this somehow? Like, how does that play out when you're sitting at 1-4?
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you got one of the guys, right? And I think Joe Burrow's still one of the guys and one of the difference makers. I think when you've got that guy, you always have hope. You always have a chance. There's not really a weekend where you're like, we play our game, we still have no chance. Like, you play your game and Joe Burrow plays to his ceiling, like, you could beat anybody in this league. To your point, they're right there in all those games and frankly gave away a few of them. So I think it's a little different scenario there than it would have been, let's say, New York and the Giants. If they fall to 1-4 yesterday and they give that game away at the end of the game, they really physically dominated for the majority of it. 37 minutes, time of possession, 170 yards rushing, and yet the Seahawks are there. If Jackson Smith and Jigba can catch a freaking pass on third down and they don't get the ball, kicked, blocked, that game may go to overtime and Seahawks may win it. And all of a sudden, those Giants are 1-4 and flying home and going, we could play our A game and we still can't find ways to win. I think that's a little different situation than it is when you truly have one of the franchise elite quarterbacks in the game that give you a chance week in and week out.
It is Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard, brought to you by MyBookie, mybookie.ag. Double that initial deposit when you mention the code next round. Very important, put in next round. Football season is here. Winning season is here. MyBookie.ag.
I got two things for you, if you wouldn't mind me hijacking this segment a little
Please
bit.
do.
2 questions for you. Number one, how did you do? Was it just carnage with the crazy college football weekend? Was it carnage over the weekend?
It was great. 10-5 Saturday.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Attaboy.
And I'll tell you, the NFL, real quick, I had, if you could tell, the Bengals plus 2.5. They lose by 3 because Zach Taylor couldn't get out of his own way. And then I had the Rams, who I thought were the better team than the Packers, and then I had the Jets early. So I was 2-3 on Saturday, 10-5 on Saturday, 2-3 on Sunday, 3 plays up tonight, 4-1 already in Major League Baseball postseason. So we're rolling. Anyway.
Okay, good, awesome. Secondly, is a barbecue guy. When I came and visited you boys down there in that studio with the old I think it was the USFL then.
Yep.
Now the UFL, and we got to hang out a little bit. Can you help me understand the difference between a shoulder and a butt? why is a pork butt, when you get it at Costco, as I do, and I have it, by the way, on the smoker right now, and when we finish, I'm going to spray it with my apple cider mix and wrap it up and finish it off.
Will this be tonight, though, Monday Night Football, Saints, Chiefs?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be ready to go for Titus when he's done with practice. And, yep, I'm kind of, this week
dad
I'm going all meat.
Yeah.
I'm going all meat this week, Lance. I'm no carbs, no sugars this week. I'm just eating meat.
Are you a guy
fish, I'm eating steak. I'm going carnivore this week.
Now, everybody will think we're getting political here, but we do have a food problem with our processed food in America.
Yes,
I don't think there's any doubt. Look, and I love it. I've got Uncrustables.
That's not political. How's that political? Why is that political?
Well, everybody makes everything political. Everything. They really do. Hey, look, you're talking about our government and how the FDA is involved and all this kind of stuff. And, people will take it whatever direction they want. Hey, look, I ate an Uncrustable this past weekend. I've got some in the fridge. They're a great snack to grow. Yeah, it's no telling what's in those. With all that said, do you typically, you've got athletes. I mean, your daughter's playing college basketball for the Grizz. Yep. You got your son out there about to get that Division I scholarship. Do you make all the kids eat clean?
No. In fact, I try to stuff Titus with as much as I possibly can calorie-wise, and we just bought 2 boxes of Uncrustables yesterday.
Love them.
It's like the greatest thing ever, especially for the kids. So no, just as much as they burn, Lance, like just go eat. And I think back, by the way, to what we ate growing up, and Damon and I talk about this all the time. Like, look at what we ate. I mean, we were poor white trash. We had milk, and we just drank milk by the gallon. I can remember like, oh gosh, it's great. It's milk day. And just like drinking it right out of the jug, and my mom making casseroles, and it was hot dogs and Hostess pies, and just trying to keep the 3 boys fed. So no, I'm of the belief of that age, just eat as much as you can because the engine's burning. But I do try as I get older, especially like in spurts. Life's too short. I'm going to enjoy my food, enjoy some drink.
Yeah.
But in spurts like this week, like, hey man, do it. Go for it. Just go straight carnivore this week. Clean the system, eat a bunch of meat, protein, some electrolytes, and get after it a little bit.
Yeah, the Huard clan. So you guys were middle class to lower class, like. You really didn't. I know your dad was a football coach, high school football coach, and obviously guys in the 80s and 90s as high school football coaches aren't making a ton of money. But I mean, where you
Mom
guys
stayed home? Yeah, we were lower middle class. We were hand-me-downs. We ran out of food at times at the end of the month. We didn't know any better. There were no trips. I never went on a plane. My first plane trip was my first recruiting trip. So we got in the Dodge minivan. Grandma Peg or now my mom, but
wasn't that to L.A. to UCLA?
Oh yeah, would load up. My first recruiting trip was to Pitt.
Okay, Pitt.
It was all the way across the country, and then UCLA and Stanford, Miami, Washington. But yeah, our road trips was like Grandma Peg loaded up the Tupperware box with as much junk as she could find at Sam's Club, right? And we were eating all the processed food, just trying to get enough calories. Sorry, I totally hijacked that with the butt and the shoulder, but some good pulled pork.
Yeah, I can't tell you the difference in the butt and the shoulder. I've got some brisket from the New York Butcher Shop, one of our local clients, great dude, and so I did the brisket sliders on Saturday for college football and the brisket quesadilla for the NFL. Ooh. Yeah, fantastic.
And
stuff.
You know what I'm picking up in 2 weeks, and we'll wrap up this food talk and end with some football. I promise. You know what I'm picking up in 2 weeks? I'm picking up my 420 pounds of beef. So this is now the second time. Last year on my birthday, I told my wife, we're doing it, right? We've got this investment up in Wyoming. It's awesome. I've gotten to know some ranchers up there. It is a crossbreed of half Wagyu and Angus. It is USDA prime. It's unbelievable. And it was the best beef and steaks and anything we've ever eaten.
How long did 420 pounds last you?
Well, that was 300 and first time was 350 pounds, and that lasted from April, and what are we, mid-October? So we got about 40 pounds of ground beef left. That's it.
Damn, y'all get after it with the meat, man.
Oh, bro.
Bunch of cavemen.
I mean, you got the baseball team coming over. I got the football team coming over. You do a barbecue for 20, 30 people. And yeah, man, you're chowing through that stuff.
So how are you doing it? Are you doing steaks? Are you doing burgers? Do you mix it up? Do you do chili?
Both. Yep. With that quality, I'm keeping the rounds and all that stuff, and they slice it up into steak, and you wouldn't even know. Like the top sirloin from the round, like it's unbelievable. But a bunch of the other parts we make into burgers and patties and ground beef, and it's just awesome. So, anywho, that's enough food talk. Can we get back to football?
Yeah.
For
so
there
are two teams with one loss, coached by former NFL players. Dan Campbell with the Detroit Lions sitting at 3-1, and then one of the worst uniform mistakes, H-Town. Now the Texans destroyed their uniforms yesterday, but they beat the Bills, and they're sitting at 4-1. I didn't think Stroud played well yesterday, but they did find a way to win. And when Nico Collins goes out of that game, that offense is completely different. But if I asked you which one-loss team do you have more confidence in right now, the Texans or Detroit?
Yeah, I would say Detroit, although they're in a much tougher division, right? I think the NFC North may be the toughest division in all of football with quarterback play and young talent and pretty deep team. So obviously the AFC South, a little different situation for Houston. So from a long-term play, I think the AFC South is more advantageous for Houston. But if you just said, hey, these two teams line up and they play in Houston like a baseball series and in Detroit and Houston, Detroit, who do you take? I probably take Detroit. And I will say this, and, keep me accountable to this over the course of the year so I don't, teeter-totter and waver back and forth. But much like college football, we're finding that if you can cut entitlement out and a team can come together, and we've seen this as we talked about last segment, and a lot of success and fruit born from it, I am more and more of the belief that if you can get your team just to the starting line and they play it like a 10, they just play it like hair on fire, fever pitch, reckless with their body, throw their violence around, like you've got a great shot in the NFL because it is so stinking hard to do.
But
this isn't a 12-game season.
Here's
right?
what's frustrating though, Brock. And I know injuries are a big part of this, not necessarily for the Bengals, but you have at one particular time over the last couple of years, if you did a top 5 win healthy best quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford are both on that list. But both of those guys are sitting at 1-4. The 3 current starting rookie quarterbacks in this league, Jaden Daniels 4-1, Bo Nix 3-2, Caleb Williams 3-2. All 3 rookie quarterbacks starting right now have winning records for their teams. Look, Jaden Daniels doing a little differently, but man, let's take a look at Bo Nix and that Denver defense. And Bo clean football yesterday. Like it's not flashy, but 3 total touchdowns, no turnovers.
No, and I think all 3 of those guys create just enough. They put just enough fear in a defense. And Bo, that's one of his attributes. And you all saw that down in Auburn and Alabama when he broke all the high school records. And then at Auburn as he's running around like a crazed man. And then out at Oregon, he didn't have to do quite as much as that because the ball got out so fast, so often. But that dude's a good athlete, a great athlete. And Caleb Williams and Jaden speak for themselves. So I think some of the fear that they create, again, in a league where to try to get these defenders to play at like a 10 every single week, to lay it on the line. What coach was it the other week in college football? We were chatting about their defense, and he's like, oh, this guy just no regard for his body. Oh, this guy, no regard for his body. Oh, this guy, no regard for his body. I mean, they just play so freaking hard. And to do that, Lance, at the NFL level, week in and week out for 18 weeks, and then into the playoffs, you see guys pace themselves. You do see guys, they just don't bring everything with them all the time. And, Deion Sanders actually said this to us during our production meeting a couple of weeks ago. And it struck all of us when he said it. But then upon further review, I'm like, I think you're right about that. He said, it's going to be easier. The NFL game is going to be easier for Travis than the college game. NFL game's way less snaps. NFL game, they protect guys, and you can't hit them like you can in college. The NFL game doesn't play at the tempo that the college game does. So physically, I mean, the skill set will be obviously much better, and you're playing against grown men who are super refined in their skill set. But from a physical standpoint, the burden on his body won't be anything like what he's put himself through at Colorado. And I don't know, as we do this week in and week out over the next 12, 13 weeks, you tell me the teams that play the hardest. You tell me the teams that are the deepest. You tell me the teams that have guys that are just, reckless with their body and reckless abandon. More often than not, those are the teams that are going to be winning and going to be in the playoffs in January.
Okay, we got to get out of here, but in 30 seconds or less, you mentioned Colorado and Deion, and we will end on a college note here. Kansas State coming off a bye, 4.5-point favorites in Boulder. Is Colorado good enough to beat Kansas State?
Go see you. I don't have a rooting interest, but this time I do. Because the following week I have them in Arizona, and I want them ranked. I want all.
Hey, Arizona's going to beat BYU, so you might get a really good matchup here.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. So in my own selfish interest, I would love to see that. If they play the game they played down at UCF, they could beat anybody in the Big 12.
Great stuff.
Can they do that consistently? Stay tuned.
Enjoy Iowa City. Make sure you have a lot of fun there. I'll be getting in touch with you, a little insight on that game. It is Brock Huard from Unlocked. It was always brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. Very important. Put in the promo code next round. Next round, they're going to double your initial deposit from our friends at mybookie.ag.